Today, we need to talk about the everyday unspoken rules of British society that tourists completely miss. If you just visit London for a week, you might not notice these, but when you actually live here, they hit you like a double-decker bus. These are the 5 British habits that visitors absolutely never expect, and they explain so much about why British people are the way they are. Let's start with number 1, and this is something that happens to me almost every single day: the apology reflex. In the US, we would never apologize unless we actually did something wrong, and even then, we might hesitate. But here in the UK, sorry is not an apology, it is a reflex, it is a punctuation mark. It is the default setting of the British soul. I was at the grocery store, the supermarket, Tesco to be exact, a few months ago. I was standing perfectly still in the aisle, looking at a wall of baked beans, trying to understand why there are so many baked beans. A woman pushing her trolley completely misjudged the distance, ran straight over my foot, and backed into a shelf. I gasped, obviously, and before I could even process the pain, she looked right at me, mortified, and went, "Oh, sorry." But then, and here is the crazy part, I looked at her, and my brain completely short-circuited, and I said, "Oh no, sorry." I apologized to the woman who ran over my foot. And she said sorry again. We were just standing there in the baked bean aisle, violently apologizing to each other for an accident that was entirely her fault. Here's the truth about the British sorry: it is not an admission of guilt. Anthropologists actually study this. There is this whole concept in sociolinguistics called negative politeness. American culture is built on positive politeness, which means we try to show closeness, enthusiasm, and warmth. We smile, we compliment your shirt, we want you to like us. British culture is built on negative politeness, which means their ultimate goal is to not impose on you. They do not want to intrude on your personal space, your time, or your emotional state. So when a British person says sorry, when you bump into them, what they are actually saying is, "I acknowledge your presence, and I am expressing regret that this awkward physical interaction has occurred between us." Historically, this goes back centuries. The British class system has always relied on highly nuanced verbal codes to maintain social harmony in a very crowded island. You have to remember the UK is roughly the size of Oregon, but it has almost 68 million people packed onto it. When you live in a society that historically densely populated, you need a social lubricant to stop people from losing their minds and killing each other. Sorry is that lubricant. In the United States, we are litigious. We literally have laws in some states called "I'm sorry" laws, which were passed specifically so that doctors could express sympathy to patients without it being used as a legal admission of liability in a malpractice lawsuit. We view an apology as a legal contract. The British view it as a way to just keep the peace. So if you come to the UK, prepare to apologize to inanimate objects because you will catch the bug. I literally apologized to a self-checkout machine the other day because it didn't scan my oat milk properly. Moving on to habit number 2, and this one caused me so much social anxiety when I first moved here: the "you alright" trap. Let me set the scene. It was my second week living in London. I was jet lagged, I was homesick, it was raining because of course it was, and I walked into a local corner shop to buy an umbrella. The guy behind the counter, a completely average guy, looks at me, gives me a little nod, and says, "You're right?" I froze. I literally panicked. In America, if a stranger looks at you and asks, "Are you all right?" it means you look like you're about to drop dead. It means you are crying, or you are bleeding, or you look deeply distressed. So my American brain instantly thought, "Oh my God, do I look terrible? Is my mascara running? Do I look depressed?" I looked at this poor man and I took a deep breath and I started trauma dumping. I was like, "Actually, I'm really struggling. The move has been so hard, my sleep schedule is completely messed up, and I miss my dog." The absolute terror in this man's eyes. He looked at me like I had just pulled the pin out of a grenade. He just wanted to scan my umbrella. In the UK, "you alright" is not a question about your mental health. It is not a wellness check. It is literally just the word hello. You are not supposed to answer it. The only correct response to alright is alright back. It's like a sonar ping. Ping, alright, that's it. Interaction complete. Why do they do this? Psychologically, it goes back to the famous British stiff upper lip and the culture of emotional stoicism. During the Victorian era, and especially through the 2 World Wars, displaying overwhelming emotion was seen as a failure of character. You had to keep calm and carry on. The phrase "you alright" is brilliant because it mimics the intimacy of caring, but it maintains a massive, safe emotional distance. It is what linguists call phatic communion, words that serve a social function rather than conveying actual information. Want the more exclusive version of this channel? Join the membership below. That's where I put the bonus content, the more personal side of things, and the thoughts that are a little too good to leave on the editing room floor. Compare this to American customer service. In the US, we expect a barista to act like our best friend. Hi, welcome in. How is your day going? What are your plans for the weekend? Oh my God, I love your top. We expect a hyper-sincere performance of joy. We are a culture of therapy speak and oversharing. We are what sociologists call a peach culture, soft and friendly on the outside, but we have a hard pit in the middle where our true private selves live. The British are a coconut culture, hard, closed off, and prickly on the outside, but once you crack them open, they are deeply loyal and sweet inside. When a Brit says all right, they are keeping their coconut shell perfectly intact. If you actually tell them how you are doing, you are holding a sledgehammer to their shell and they will absolutely hate you for it. Okay, let's pivot to habit number 3, which completely shatters the stereotype that British people are completely reserved. We need to talk about the sacred ritual of the pub round. In the US, we would never ever do this. If a group of American friends goes out to a bar, what happens at the end of the night? The bartender brings the check, and we turn into accountants. We pull out our phones, we open our calculators, we use Venmo, we use Zelle. We say, okay, Jessica had 2 margaritas, but Kevin had a craft beer and some fries, so Kevin owes $14.20 plus a 20% tip, so let me send a request. It is highly individualistic. You pay for exactly what you consumed. Here in the UK, that behavior will get you socially ostracized. Welcome to the round system. When you go to a pub with a group of British people, one person will immediately walk to the bar and say, "What are we having?" They will buy the first round of drinks for the entire table. When those drinks are about halfway empty, the next person will stand up and say, "My round," and buy drinks for everyone. This continues until everyone in the group has bought a round. I was literally shocked the first time this happened. I went out with 5 co-workers after work. One guy bought 6 pints, then the next girl bought 6 pints. By round 3, I was mathematically calculating the financial ruin I was about to endure, and also realizing I could not physically drink 6 pints of beer on a Tuesday. But here is the thing you have to understand. The round system is not about alcohol. It is a foundational economic and social contract. It is the absolute bedrock of British social trust. Historically, the British public house, the pub, has been the literal living room of the community since the Roman times, but especially since the 1830 Beer House Act, which allowed anyone to brew and sell beer from their home to bypass taxes on spirits. The pub was where you went to get warm, to hear the news, to find a job. Because the pub was a shared community space, the drinking was communal. Psychologically, buying a round is an exercise in egalitarianism. It shows that you trust your group. When you buy a round, you are projecting generosity. When you accept a drink in a round, you are accepting a social debt. If you leave the pub before it is your turn to buy a round, you have committed the ultimate British sin. You are a freeloader, and they won't yell at you because remember, negative politeness, but they will remember it forever. They will hold on to that grudge until the end of time. And if you try to say, "Oh, I'll just buy my own," you are essentially telling the group, "I do not want to be part of your tribe. I do not trust you, and I do not want you to trust me." It feels financially reckless to an American, but to a Brit, the collective bond is worth way more than the extra £5 you might lose if your pint was cheaper than someone else's. Habit number 4. Oh my goodness, we have to talk about the queues, the invisible, sacred queue. Every American knows the stereotype that British people love to stand in line. We call it a line, they call it a queue. But tourists think the queue is just a physical line of people standing behind each other at a bus stop. No, no, no. The queue is a state of mind. The queue is an invisible force field that governs all physical space in the United Kingdom. I experienced this in a crowded pub. When you walk up to a busy British pub bar, there is no physical line. People are just crowded around the wooden bar, 3 deep, holding money, looking at the taps. To an American, this looks like a free-for-all. In a crowded bar in New York or Chicago, the rule is survival of the fittest. You push to the front, you make aggressive eye contact with the bartender, you wave your credit card, and you shout your order. The loudest, most assertive person gets the drink. If you do that in a British pub, you will become a ghost. The bartender will look right through you. The locals will mentally banish you to the shadow realm, because even though it looks like chaos, there is an invisible, highly structured queue taking place. Everyone at that bar knows exactly who arrived before them and who arrived after them. The bartender knows exactly whose turn it is. If the bartender accidentally points to a Brit and says, "What can I get you?" and the Brit knows the person next to them has been waiting longer, the Brit will actually point to the stranger and say, "No, mate, he was next. I was literally shocked. I watched a man give up his turn to get a beer to a stranger just because the invisible rules of the queue demanded it. Why are they like this?" You have to look at the history of World War II and the Blitz. During the war, the UK experienced intense rationing. Food, clothes, petrol, everything was strictly limited by the government, specifically spearheaded by Lord Woolton, the Minister of Food. The entire survival of the nation depended on the concept of fair shares for all. Everyone suffered equally, whether you were a factory worker or an aristocrat. Queuing became a patriotic duty. It was a physical manifestation of fairness and solidarity. Psychologically, the British value fairness over individualism. In America, we worship the hustle. We love the guy who cuts corners, bends the rules, and gets ahead. We call it being a go-getter. The British absolutely despise the hustle if it comes at the expense of the collective. Queue jumping is not just a minor annoyance here, it is an attack on the moral fabric of society. If you cut in line in the US, someone might yell at you, "Hey buddy, back of the line." In the UK, nobody will yell at you. Instead, you will be subjected to the most devastating, soul-crushing chorus of aggressive throat-clearing, heavy sighing, and passive-aggressive muttering you have ever heard in your life. Tut tut. The British tut is a weapon of mass destruction. It means you have failed as a member of civilized society. And finally, we arrive at habit number 5. This is the one that still trips me up, and it is the linguistic chasm between American enthusiasm and British understatement. Americans use hyperbole as a second language. British people use understatement and sarcasm as their primary operating system. Let me give you an example. In the US, if you ask me how my vacation was and I had a good time, I will say, "Oh my God, it was literally the most amazing trip of my entire life. The food was absolutely incredible. I am obsessed." We use words like awesome, incredible, and perfect to describe a basic sandwich. We are a cheerleading culture. We reward enthusiasm. In the UK, if someone wins the lottery, gets married, and finds a cure for a disease all on the same day, and you ask them how they are doing, they will take a sip of tea, look into the distance, and say, "Yeah, not bad, can't complain, not bad." That is the highest compliment a British person can give. I learnt this the hard way at work. I submitted a massive presentation to my British boss. I had worked on it for weeks. In the US, a boss would say, "Great job, team. Knocked it out of the park." My British boss looked at the presentation, nodded, and said, "Yes, quite good." I went to the bathroom and cried. I thought I was getting fired. I thought quite good meant barely acceptable. Quite good meant barely acceptable. I didn't realize that in British English, quite good actually means this is a masterpiece. Quick side note, because the channel stats have mildly offended me, around 87% of you are watching without subscribing. So if you like this weird little corner of the internet where I overanalyze everything, hit subscribe and stay for the next identity crisis. Conversely, if a British person says, "We seem to be having a bit of a minor issue," it means the building is currently on fire, the roof has collapsed, and we are all going to die. This pathological need to downplay everything is known as letotes, expressing a positive by negating its opposite. Why do they do this? Why is earnestness practically illegal in the UK? It comes back to the British discomfort with standing out. In American culture, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You have to advocate for yourself, you have to sell yourself, because America is a vast continent where you can reinvent yourself every day. The UK is an ancient, historically stratified society with a deeply ingrained class system. For centuries, showing off, boasting, or being overly earnest was seen as incredibly vulgar. It was considered new money behavior. True aristocrats didn't need to shout about how great they were, they just existed. So, downplaying your achievements, your emotions, and your circumstances became a sign of refinement and intelligence. Furthermore, banter and sarcasm are the ways British people show affection. In the US, if we like someone, we tell them, "You're so great, I love hanging out with you." In the UK, if someone likes you, they will brutally insult you. They will mock your haircut, they will make fun of your shoes, and they will absolutely tear your opinions to shreds. If a British person is being polite and nice to you, they probably don't care about you. If they are mercilessly roasting you, congratulations, you are officially their best friend. This creates a massive counter-argument to the idea that Americans have about Brits. Americans think British people are incredibly formal, stiff, and humorless, mostly because we associate their accents with Shakespeare and period dramas. But the reality is, the British sense of humor is aggressive, dark, and highly contextual. They use humor as a shield and a weapon. When things go terribly wrong, say a train is delayed for 3 hours, pouring rain is flooding the station, and everyone is miserable, an American will complain and demand to speak to a manager. A British person will look at the flooded tracks, smile grimly, and say, "Lovely weather for ducks, isn't it?" They find comfort in the absurdity of misery. Living in the UK for the past couple of years has been the most deeply educational experience of my life. You start to realize that the American way of doing things, our hyper-individualism, our loud enthusiasm, our directness, is not the default setting for the rest of the world. The British habits that seemed so confusing to me at first, the endless apologies, the emotional distance of "you all right?", the expensive rounds at the pub, the invisible cues, the crippling understatement, they are not random quirks, they are survival mechanisms, they are the intricate, invisible threads that hold a very old, very crowded society together. I used to think it was exhausting to constantly monitor these unspoken rules. Now, I actually kind of love it. I love the unspoken solidarity of the queue. I secretly love the fact that I don't have to fake a huge smile and tell a barista my life story when I'm having a bad day. I can just say, "all right," and be left in peace. I love the communal warmth of buying a round at a cozy pub while the rain lashes against the windows. I have been completely conditioned. I am turning into a coconut. And honestly, not bad. Not bad at all. So the next time you visit the UK, please do not try to cut the line. Do not trauma dump on the cashier at Sainsbury's. And whatever you do, if someone buys you a pint, you better buy the next round. Trust me, it will save you from the ultimate devastation of a British tut.